Good morning, everyone. May I say thank you very much, Emperor Gibson, for the opportunity to come and share my thoughts with you. It's good to see so...
You forgot the Tsar.
Oh, the Tsar. Oh, of course. PSN Tsar. Thank you very much, Andy. And it's a very good lead-in for me to say a few things. I had the opportunity to become the Socitm president in April, which afforded me a lovely badge, which was quite interesting because when I got off the train at St James's, it's the home of London Underground, and of course I walked in and people thought I worked there because yes, it has its advantages. It didn't get me free tickets though. So I have had a involvement with PSN in my day job, which is IT Group Manager at Surrey County Council. And one of the things that I've done at Surrey has been to work with some really great colleagues across the local public sector, across the tiers of government, to build a local PSN across Surrey and Berkshire. So I've had quite a bit of involvement directly as program manager, program director even for that. We keep the titles high, haven't we? As program director for Unicorn. And many people have asked me why we called it Unicorn. It was the Unified Communities Over Regional Network. It seemed like a good idea at the time. But over the last year or so in the build-up to the presidency, it's given me a different perspective on PSN because I've been able to get involved in some different level conversations about what's good and bad about PSN and how local government and the local public sector can engage with that. So what I want to do is to talk a little bit about the journey we've travelled over the last 12 months or so, where we are now and what we're going to try and do next. And one of the things I was very lucky to be involved in on Friday was the first local government PSN Program Board that we were able to put in place. And my thanks go to Siobhan Coughlin from the LGA for enabling that to all come together with a good group of people. And I'm going to talk a bit more about why we put that in place and what that's going to do for us. So let me start by saying PSN means different things to different people. It depends where you come from, what part of government you work in, whether you work in local government, local public sector, central government, supply side. PSN has slightly different meanings. It's all the same area, but for me, from a local government perspective, PSN is all about putting in place a shared collaborative infrastructure. It's about building an infrastructure that allows us to do business differently, allows local governments and other areas of local public sector to come together and hope to improve the efficiency and the productivity of the services that we offer, to join them together in different ways to provide a better service to the citizen. That's what PSN is all about to us. And it's been a vehicle to achieve that. And so at a regional level, it's about putting in place contracts for infrastructure to create a single network where we've got shared offices, shared accommodation, multi-agency, where we want to create multidisciplinary teams. It's about being able to put one infrastructure in place instead of many and sharing that. And in Surrey and Berkshire, we've been able to do that across the tiers of government, across the health sector, across education, engaged right up to the university level, but particularly the use has been across the schools sector, blue lights, particularly fire services, third sector and service providers into local government, all have a stake and an interest in that infrastructure that's gone in, delivered once, not many times. And it's important to recognise that what we've built, we call a public services network, but actually it's a physical infrastructure that we can use in many different ways. So it can be multi-purpose. It absolutely can conform and be compliant to PSN standards and allow that collaboration at a PSN level. But sometimes we can use it with virtualizing the infrastructure. We can deliver all sorts of connectivity to different compliance standards and deliver a whole set of services over that same physical environment. And that's very important when we look that people that we want to do business with aren't all PSN accredited organisations. And we have to be able to share information securely and safely with a range of different people. And we can do that with those regional networks that we've put in place. So that's important to us. It's certainly made financial savings by the economies of scale of all collaborating together and being able to buy into that once and have that greater buying power. That's really good. Perhaps the most important thing for me that I've seen from PSN, though, is it's not about the contracts, the procurement, the infrastructure that we bought. It's been a great excuse to bring together local public services together with a common interest to get together to talk about the business that we're delivering, to talk about different ways in which we can deliver those services and how we can bring teams together and work differently. It's been a great excuse to have that conversation, and I'm really pleased that PSN's made that possible. So, what happened last financial year? Local public services, particularly local government, had an interesting journey. We see PSN as all of those things. But absolutely there is also PSN as the set of standards, the set of compliance requirements to enable us to share data with each other and to secure sensitive data effectively between different partners. And that's fine, and that's very important. It's highly important and also quite complex. So what we found is that over the last 12 months, we shifted our focus and attention from transforming services to making sure we met the compliance. And unfortunately, I think what we found was that we needed a level playing field to do that. And we didn't really have a level playing field. We had some organisations that were very secure and robust in the way they'd got their services laid out, the way in which they could take data and services from other organisations and look after those whilst it was in their possession. And we had others that needed to do a fair bit more work, whether that was on endpoint security, server security, patching, penetration testing, compliance, to make sure that the whole of the environment was working to a level that anyone sharing data could trust another person they were sharing data to. And frankly, that was quite a big distraction. It took a lot of time, energy, resources, and cost in order to get us to that point. I think it's tremendous that we got to the end of March this year and all but a handful of organisations across the whole of local government had succeeded in achieving that level of compliance. Took an awful lot of effort, but we got to that level playing field. And for those handful of authorities that had the most complex issues to address, they were able to work very closely with colleagues in the Cabinet Office to agree action plans to resolve those. And I think that was a world of difference from where we were perhaps 6-9 months ago in terms of the requirements to meet compliance. And that flexibility to find ways of resolving those issues has been a tremendous shift. Local government also had to do quite a lot of self-support across the sector in providing support. We did that through things like the Socitm Solutions Advisory Group to find expertise and share that between organisations to help people achieve those compliance requirements. And I think I saw a very significant shift at the start of this calendar year, working as I was fortunate to be able to do, to join a a group that Stephen Kelly, Chief Operating Officer in the Cabinet Office and for Government, set up to work across the sector to find ways to achieve the compliance requirements in the most effective, sensible way. And we saw that shift at the start of this year, and it made a world of difference and got us to the point where we were in March. I've noticed these slides have changed. All the titles have changed. Never mind. That very top line is supposed to be big and red and impressive, but never mind. So a mandate for change. This did move us forward, but it only moved us so far, because one of the unfortunate consequences that happened by meeting those compliance requirements was that we had to stop doing a bunch of things. Or we had projects in train that were transformatory, that were cross-sector, that involved creating multidisciplinary teams and things, and we weren't really able to undertake those within the compliance regime. So there's actually a whole chunk of unfinished business. And what we want is to get back onto the real agenda, which is business change, which is about making those transformations. And in order to do that, we need to move to a different approach and a new phase. And I'm very pleased to see some work that was undertaken by colleagues in the LGA, and Carolyn Downs, the Chief Exec of LGA, put together a sort of statement, a status of where we are across local public services, particularly local government, in terms of what we've achieved to reach a level playing field of compliance, but also to identify that the job's not done and there's a number of areas that we need to resolve. And shared that with Stephen Kelly, and I'm really pleased to see there was tremendous support to come together, to bring resources together, to look to address these issues and work on those clear activities to address the issues. And I'm going to talk a bit about how we're going to do that. So the first thing, the most important thing, is to bring together the right key stakeholders to help us do this. And to do that, we've identified representatives across the various tiers of local government, whether it's district, county, unitary, metropolitan, etc., organisations that can represent the interests of local government. And then to match that together with colleagues from representative bodies such as Socitm and LGA, the local CIO Council group, the local government delivery council in the LGA, and bring that together with Andy's colleagues within the Cabinet Office and from the PSNA team, and also CSG for advice on security practices and most appropriate tools and mechanisms to use, Information Commissioner's Office for data protection, Office of Government CSIRO for information assurance, compliance, DCLG, whole list of different organisations. By bringing all of those people together in one functioning group, we can start to really change things. And what we've done is we've put together a program board. Its first meeting was on Friday. We have some objectives for that group that we agreed, which is really around creating a fit-for-purpose information assurance model for local public service delivery, and also to focus on maximising the opportunities that there are from PSN to create effective and efficient delivery for joined-up services across local public sector. The board's role is to begin by looking at developing the case for PSN. Let's be clear about the real benefits that we can get out of PSN, how we can leverage the power of the infrastructure and the standards in place to allow us to join up. And then let's focus on those particular issues that are holding us back. So we'll do that by organising some task and finish groups to address those outstanding issues. looking at each of those issues, we'll identify and share the good practice already in place across local public services and local government, so that where someone's cracked the issue and they've got an excellent model for operation, let's share that and make sure everybody knows about it. The Programme Board will also take a role on behalf of councils to oversee and monitor the compliance process and make sure it continues to be fit for purpose going forwards. And probably one of the most important things for the board is to act as a communications conduit to share the learning, the best practice, and any solutions that come out of that across the sector. So the task and finish groups, well, at the end of the last financial year, there was a number of areas that were causing some frustration, some pain. I see some nodding heads in the audience. I think some of these will feel familiar. That's not a total list, and actually that list continues to change, because if we're going to use PSN to transform services, we're going to find things that do and don't work as we go forward, and it's really important to be able to deal with those. So some of these perhaps bigger issues than others. Probably the biggest issue that's affected people has been the feeling of constraints in place for unmanaged endpoints and for equipment not owned corporately by the organisation, and therefore without full control over that environment. And that particularly affects things like bring your own device. But unmanaged endpoints can also sit with partners in the third sector. If you look at the integrated health and social care agenda coming out of the care bill, and that whole business process of how we do business to deliver a service to the citizen, that whole process now includes organisations that will never be PSN compliant, have no interest in being PSN compliant, don't have a mandate for it, don't have a budget for it, and they're still really important groups to be able to share carefully and securely sensitive information so that we can deliver the best possible service to the citizen. And so that, I think, is a very key area. Another area that came out loud and strong was the whole shared services and shared accommodation agenda. I know in Surrey and Berkshire we have a number of properties, particularly district council offices, that are very multi-agency now, with different tiers of government operating in there, with blue lights, health, all operating out of the same building. And we're creating multidisciplinary teams with people from different sectors sitting next to each other and working together to deliver. And we've had some complexities about how they can share the same information, even sitting next to each other and looking over the shoulder, that sort of thing. The policies and practices around how you can make those teams work effectively is something that needs more work. And that whole architectural model about how we share data inside PSN securely, but then how you pop out of it at the appropriate time to be able to share data outside of PSN and bring it back again, and that whole model. There's some other issues, BPSS, baseline security checks. I think that's moved on tremendously over the last few weeks, and Cabinet Office have provided some further guidance. And we're seeing some movement. There's still some questions around checks. I can't remember what they're called at the moment. But anyway, there's various checks you have to do back over the last 3 years, something or other. I can't quite get it. Yes, one of those. And we just need to nail that down and make sure the guidance is clear. Consistency of IT health checks, Windows XP, and the implications of those still using it on security compliance, big issues. That might not be the right list. So Socitm's going to do a survey to find out across local government. Look out for that survey. Feedback whether you think that accords with what you think the issues are, and let's get the list right and work on it. We'll use the task and finish groups to review the guidelines and advice, identify the best practice to meet that guideline and advice. Where there isn't good practice, we'll bring in expertise to develop solutions and recommend ways in which those solutions can be adopted. and we'll support councils through that process. So, quickly, some of you will have worked with Solutions Advisory Group. Earlier this year, we asked for, Socitm suggested that over the last year, that's been a very voluntary group. It's a lot of expertise. People also have day jobs. It's very, very difficult for them to free up enough time to do that well. So we suggested some crowdfunding to help the process. If you go to socitm.net homepage, you'll see a link on there to the crowdfunding page. It explains it a bit more. What we were looking for was to get organisations across local public sector and the supply chain to contribute to helping create a fund of money that can bring in the right expertise to help solve some of these problems. Solutions Advisory Group will work with the task and finish groups and will provide the chair for each of those task and finish groups. So there'll be a direct link between the SAG and the task and finish groups, and we will use that funding to help push that process forward. So, in concluding, I was going to do a football analogy. I'm kind of regretting that at the moment, but you'll see I was very careful. If you look very carefully, that's not the England team. I thought that would probably be quite damning. They got green socks on, so it's not the England team. So they're a very effective team. And what I wanted to say was, we've had a very tough first half, been quite defensive. We haven't managed to score the goals that we wanted to in all the areas that we wanted to so far. We're really keen to move on and meet those business demands. So half time is about regrouping, it's about team building, it's about getting the right people together and building a strategy for the second half. And the most important message on this slide is we've moved to a position now where, whether we're in local government, local public services or central government, or on the supply side represented by PSNGB, we're all on the same side. We all want the same thing and we all want to achieve success in transformation. So the second half is looking much more promising. If you've got particular thoughts on those priorities, please respond to the survey. If you want to drop me a line at the socitm.net address or chat about it on Twitter, then very pleased to see that. Thank you very much.
Mark Foden really. Nick was saying that in the second half, as it were, the critical agenda was about business change. Yet I suspect, from having looked around outside here, there's many of the people represented here are suppliers of network wherewithal, network infrastructure. What can those kind of organisations do to enable that second half agenda?
Well, for me, I think we have to get over some of the distractions that we've had. We have to be able to make PSN work for us in the best possible way. And there's a tremendous set of tools and technologies available to do business differently. And I think we've got to a position now where we're on a level playing field where we all trust each other as users of the PSN to be able to share data. And that's a big hurdle to get over, actually, because if you haven't got that trust in place, then we can't do business differently. But moving on from there and overcoming some of the issues and challenges that we still have to address, I hope that the expertise that's available within the supply side can really demonstrate and show innovative possibilities. So I think it's up to us from a local public service perspective to describe and tell the story of what it is we want to do, how we could do things differently, who we want to work with, how we might deliver business in a different way, and then ask the supply side to say, okay, well, if this is what we want to do, what have you got in your portfolio that supports that? So the challenge is there, really, and I think those that can describe that best will be most successful.
I'd like to comment on that as well, actually, because it's a very good question. And one of the things that we need to see in that second half is a continuation of the collaboration that happens when industry really gets its thinking hat on and that was focused on getting PSN this far. Now, let's be practical and sensible about this. There is a market, and the market is all-powerful, and competition will remain the most powerful driver for industry. But we have to get around the fortress walls, have to get through the fortress walls that tend to protect a big industry contract with any organisation. And an SI would tell you this. We have to get through that and start thinking about how we make all those connections work, because Ian came up with a great definition of the PSN. It is about all that interconnection across an agreed set of standards. PSN's just an enabler, though. You know what? In a few years' time, no one's going to talk about it because it'll just be there. It'll be the services that are being enabled over the top of it. So, that industry collaboration has to continue, and we're thinking about that. We're very much thinking about that in PSNGB, because it is a collective, and we do meet every month, and we do talk about the issues, and we have some work streams that work in particular focus areas. So it's a good question, and it does need continued focus. One last question I think we can do.
Roger Wilson, Chairman of Adept Telecom. So forgive me if you think this is actually not a question to give Ian another opportunity. It's for Andy, and possibly comment from Nick. We've heard a lot today about the importance of compliance and security of government data, and absolutely I understand the importance of sensitive data. But at the same time, every organisation in the private sector has to protect data. I don't want my credit card details disappearing from Amazon or eBay or whatever. So I guess the question is, does Andy have a view? In truth, what proportion of government data is truly sensitive? That is, it needs a higher level of security than normal commercial data, against what proportion is actually just normal commercial data that can be treated in the same way as Amazon or eBay treats their data? Because that is a pretty big stumbling block for SMEs to get through if we're faced by this sort of blank wall of, it's sensitive government, it's different somehow. It's not all different, is it? And what proportion is different?
A very tiny proportion. So the security policy framework and the new classification scheme, while generally is creating more questions than are being answered at the moment, is creating work for people, are exactly about answering that question in a better way. So official, secret and top secret, it's really simple. I can't remember I don't know a percentage, but the bulk is official. The way we should handle that is good commercial practice. Now, just as you are a very diverse set of organisations, central government is too. Good commercial practice is going to be a range of things. If you are working in defence and things like that, then or highly commercial areas, then you will treat it differently to a retailer and again a professional services firm. But good commercial practice is the basis of that new classification scheme. And if you read the new security policy framework, there's a short paragraph what types of controls are needed. Everyone would agree in this room. They're just common sense, sensible, modern ways to treat it. There is a cliff edge before you get to secret and top secret, and most of us in this room don't have to worry about that because that's nationally sensitive things, and it's a very small proportion. But within that official, it's a broad church, so there are things that are sensitive and will need different controls. But the basic starting point is good commercial practice. Now we need to ask ourselves, are we doing good commercial practice? And the challenge is we're not all doing that yet. So, but the answer is it's the bulk is basically that official stuff.
I think this is a very interesting question. Thank you for that, because I think it does demonstrate the perspectives I was talking about how do we perceive PSN, how do we approach it, and from a local public sector perspective, actually, the vast majority of data that we handle doesn't even get onto that level. It's completely non-protected, because if we get a freedom of information question on it, then we put it on the website and everyone can see it. The vast majority of the data we handle is public information. We then have information that, and I locally I tend to categorise it differently. Non-sensitive is public information. Sensitive, we need to manage it carefully and we need to be able to share it with a range of partners. And then what has in the past been called PSN data, which we know doesn't work because you can't really just categorise something as PSN data, but it does fit with the government categories, which is data you need to protect in a specific compliant way. And PSN for me is a set of tools and technologies that allows us to handle those data in a different way and translate them and communicate them in different ways. But the vast majority of it is open data.
Thanks, Nick.